I want to talk a little bit about thoughts that I've had on how growth happens in our personal, spiritual, professional lives. And I'm going to do it through the framework of the Serenity Prayer. And I want to make a caveat. I want to be really clear. This episode is not an infomercial for Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? But I am going to talk about this prayer. It's this mantra, if you will, whatever word, this slogan, this saying, whatever word sits right with you, you've heard it. God, you can get rid of that word if you want. Don't need it. Whatever word works for you. Universe, Allah, Buddha, higher self, higher power, whatever word works for you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You know this saying, you've heard it. We're just going to use this as the framework to talk about how this really does kind of encapsulate kind of everything you need to do in order to grow as a person in this world. Okay. God, grant me the serenity to God, whatever person, thing, universe. Yeah. Okay. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Now, I think that the way that we tend to interpret this phrase is there are bad things in the world and in the universe that we wish would change, that should change, that our lives would be so much better if that person just wouldn't do that, or if people just weren't like this, that we can't change, and we have to just accept those things. And I think that's how we interpret that phrase, is like, there's all this bad shit. There's all the climate change, war, famine, abuse, exploitation, coercion, manipulation, all the things we talked about before, that we wish were different and that we have so little control over. Money woes, all this stuff. We wish we could change these things and we can't. And I think that's how we tend to view this phrase, is it's like stuff that should change, but that we have no power to change. And it does include that stuff, because sometimes there are things that people need to change. Sometimes you are in a situation where a person is being abusive to you, where a person is being manipulative with their language or with their body language to you, where bad stuff is happening and you wish it would change and you wish you had some kind of power to control it or to change it. And you need that serenity to let go of that and look inward on what you can do. Can you leave? Can you seek shelter or safety in some way? Can you do something to free yourself of that negative situation? So this does exist, this framework of like stuff that should change that I can't change. But the thing that I think gets left out of this with grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, I think we tend to end it there, that there's all this stuff that I wish would change, but I can't change it. But there's also things in our lives that we wish would change that are actually fine the way they are. They don't need to be changed. And what needs to be changed is us. Those things are fine the way that they are. We wish they would change because we think we'd feel better if they changed, but those things are actually fine. And there's nothing wrong with them. An example, you're on a plane and a 6-year-old is watching a cartoon on an iPad and laughing really loudly behind you. And you're a little bit nervous and anxious on planes, and you're kind of tired, and you just want that fucking kid to shut up. Valid. And I get it. And maybe you're like, nah, that kid should change and stop being a friggin' annoying little kid. But like fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with that kid enjoying that cartoon and laughing. They don't need to change. They don't need to stop being a 6-year-old so that you can have a better flight. You need to figure out what your approach to being in closed quarters in a confined space on an air pressurized tube in the air is going to be, to make sure that you do what you need to do to have a comfortable flight. Because you can't control anyone else on this flight. Can't control them. And that kid who's laughing loudly and annoying you isn't actually doing anything wrong. They don't actually need to change. Maybe a more succinct and healthy and useful example. One that I'm sure you've experienced. I know I have. I think it's very common. I think it's universal. I think the experience of this is unavoidable, just like the experience of being annoyed at the kid laughing might be unavoidable. You might not be able to avoid the feeling of being annoyed. And that's okay. But you don't have to act from that feeling. If you act from that feeling and you turn around and you look at that kid's parents and you say, well, you shut him up, you're coming to the world with an expectation that the world should change to make you feel better rather than you changing to make yourself feel better. And it's unreasonable to ask for the world to change. So this next example, I think, further solidifies that. Have you ever had a situation where someone in your life that you care about or that you're close to, or maybe even not, maybe like an enemy, maybe an old high school nemesis, gets something or has an experience that you see on social media or you learn about from a friend at lunch, and it makes you feel enormously jealous or resentful? Someone gets engaged, someone that you have a crush on gets into a new relationship, and you feel jealous, you feel like you lost somehow. Again, you can't avoid it. Jealousy is going to be there. You can't stop having that feeling. That's impossible. But what you might be able to do is feel that feeling, acknowledge it, acknowledge that it's valid and that it's not something that you control. That's another thing you don't control. So in the grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, part of that is the feelings that come in, the feelings that emerge from certain stimuli. You don't control that. You don't control that. You can't control that. And that's okay. But you get to control your response to it. So an example of this right now that just happened in my life, a friend of mine, without naming names, recently started painting for the first time in his life. And he started painting like in his mid-40s, just randomly. And wouldn't you know it, lo and behold, he's kind of great at it. He's kind of brilliant at it. And I'm so proud of him. And his paintings are like really, really wonderful. And I mean, I'm even kind of jealous of them. I'm kind of like, geez, should I like go out and get some canvas and try painting? I mean, like, he just picked it up and he's pretty damn good at it. But I'm also like not surprised that he's good at it. I think one of this person's key talents is having an eye for aesthetic and detail and like how shape and color interplay with each other. He's always had a good eye for that. And I think that like it makes sense that you would be a good painter. But this person who randomly decided to start painting in his mid-40s has a sister who's been painting her entire adult life, who has 2 degrees in fine art. And upon seeing that her brother had sold a painting for $600 in his first couple months of being a painter, she made a remark to him, something to the effect of like, oh, wow, I guess I didn't need those 2 degrees or those 2 decades of practice. I guess I could have just farted out, a masterpiece and sold it for several $100. She came to him in a spirit of jealousy, insecurity, fear, experiencing emotions that we've all experienced before that are understandable and relatable, emotions that we all get and that we all know intimately. The problem is she came to him with an expectation that like there's something he's supposed to do to fix those feelings for her. And if you think about it, it's like, well, what is he supposed to do in that situation? What is he supposed to change to make her feel better? Is he supposed to not paint or paint worse? And both of those requests are unreasonable requests. There's actually nothing in this situation that he can do or should do to make her feel better. There is nothing that he needs to change to make her feel better. She's the one who has to change. So in this situation, she is lacking the wisdom to know the difference between the things that she cannot change and the things that she needs to change if she wants to grow.